Oh, sorry.
Trevor and
Connie.
I think, I'm not opposed to this, I think, but I hear what you're talking about, Derek. So I think there's a bunch of work that we need to do first with the different committees to look at bringing it forward before making a decision that we're gonna spend money, and then how are we gonna do that and where's it gonna come from. I think our experience going through the crab license was a good example of that. Getting caught up in that and whatnot, and it's all great ideas, but how do we make it work for us? I have thought about too of owning a boat. We've owned boats before, we've gone through that, we've got rid of them. Maybe it's about purchasing a large boat and hiring our fishermen to work on that boat, so we have a big equipped boat to do this work instead of getting a fleet. I mean, we're just brainstorming right now, but anyway, that's something that comes to mind for me, because then it also puts us in the area for doing test fisheries and all of that kind of stuff for DFO.
Yeah, with the boat you can go out to.
Yeah, so anyway, just seems like we've got a few steps to do here.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Before we go to Trevor, one of the advantages of buying Clipper's boat is that it's fiberglass.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have as high a maintenance as say the Teresa N and the Drifter had.
Mhm.
They were both wooden hulls, so they required a lot of maintenance.
Mhm.
And they were older wooden hull boats, so that's where we got burned. But if you're buying a fiberglass boat, that's the different story on the maintenance issue. Trevor?
I think Connie's right. I think we would want to do some work to bring back to council, because I think if Cayuga has a boat, I bet they have a fisheries plan that goes with what they're going to do each year.
Yep.
It doesn't feel like we necessarily have that plan in place for what we want to do in regards to our treaty needs or our nation's needs, and it's sometimes a little bit too easy to punt it over to Patrick and say, hey Patrick, go get us a license, when the other thing we're asking him to do is bring us money. So I think on the Fisheries Limited Partnership side, we definitely support the way at fisheries and want to contribute any which way we can, but I think from our nation's level, from the leadership table, we should figure out within the treaty what we want to do over the next year and how the businesses can support it. But I wouldn't want to see, we have licenses within the Fisheries Limited Partnership right now, but I don't see it really growing much more. Like it's going to be hard for us to be a going concern in fisheries, because what John's saying is correct. It's not a rosy picture. It's not horrible, but our aim is we're putting millions of dollars into watershed renewal. We want to maintain our fisheries and our rights, and I think we should do that. But I think it should be in the context of doing that work here at the nation level, with participation from the businesses, but not the businesses doing any of the spearheading or necessarily holding the licenses.
Good, thanks.
So there were a couple of things that were mentioned that I think bear not repeating, but to kind of say, I'm open to how we want to go about making a decision on what we acquire and how we acquire it, though. But there needs to be a straight line between us and actually making those decisions. So I don't know where that starts, but I know that it starts in an analysis and the value that can be created. The problem, though, is whether or not we want that value to be created collectively or individually. So the Tuktoyaktuk nations are arranging their fishery in such a way that they're trying to make it so that they're basically allowing their fishermen to benefit from this, but they're on their own. The nations are going to have to figure out some sort of regime to regulate and make sure that they monitor the catches and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a cost involved in doing this that hasn't been necessarily fully thought out on the Monmouth side. Part of the problem is that needs to be negotiated. So what we are looking at here is we're kind of stuck in regards to, we should make a decision on what licenses we want to acquire, because there's a timeline involved. But Trevor and Connie are very correct in regards to wanting to do an analysis on the economic and financial benefits of various choices.
Mhm.
So because Tuckweehak was set up in such a way to allow for, we're not supposed to use the term anymore, but mosquito fleet of medium to small boats going out and making supplemental income based on other things that they may be doing, right?
License splitting is a term we use now. Right?
Yeah, a community fishery.
Yeah, well, not community fishery, no,
Community
like they
fishery,
changed it.
yeah. It was the
Lost
most,
what they're
it was the
talking
most
about.
politically correct term for it.
Yeah.
So, but there is a real financial and business case for concentrating both quota and or licenses in a larger vessel. But the thing is, we need to have a way for this to benefit our people or not. And if we don't do it in such a way that puts the benefits on the citizens in regards to they can go out and go catch fish, then we need to have a system that allows for fishermen and deckhands and people who want to learn to have the ability to realistically get a chance to work on that vessel, and so on and so forth. The other item at that point is large vessel, yes, how we arrange the business and who holds the licenses and that sort of thing is something that we can decide technically later. And it makes it difficult though, because you want to do an analysis on the business case for everything around fisheries as well. And then those things might inform which licenses we want to get. So the fisheries considerations document and the framework and all the documents that you have now have a good amount of technical information and recommendations on which licenses you could acquire for what costs. On average, they do change. But we want to check in with council to see, are there any specific licenses that are key to us? Do we want to go, do we want brown fish or do we want salmon?
Yeah.
Right? Or some mixture therein. Prawn, great, supplemental on the side. Other types of things that we might want to look at, the costs involved might be prohibitive depending on where we want to make our decisions. Does the money limit our choices or do our choices determine how we spend our money? And it's going to be somewhere in between, but we need it from both angles. So from a social perspective, a cultural perspective, a historic perspective, I see the value in fisheries to people who've done this their whole lives. These are our farmers, right? A lot of other societies, they venerate their farmers because that's what they're doing. Our fishermen are the people who held up our society, and so there's a value in and of itself in doing it. We need to make a determination on what that is.
Yeah. I still, if you should.
Just one quick comment. Thanks, John, for the information. One of the things that we haven't done in a long time, and the whole reason why we have, allocations and licenses to discuss right now is because of the direction from our citizens and our treaty, and the reason why it's built into our nation today, fisheries, is because when we're going into negotiations, that was the direction from our citizens. And us as a government, I don't think we paid enough attention to building a strategy. Trevor talked about a strategy or a plan around fisheries in general, and it's a lot different than it was then going into treaty, because we never had the structure we have today. Now we have an economic arm, and we have the government responsibility side to getting fish into the freezers into the homes of our citizens. So there's a couple actions here. There's a business action, and there's the action of the citizens just want their fish. And in saying that, I know our Hotway at one point made comments about wanting to see our nation achieve fishing the entire allocation, and I don't think we've even gotten there yet. So I want to suggest that we have a strategic discussion around this. Put everything that we have, on both sides, on the business side and the responsibilities of the government to get food fish out there. I think we need to put all that on the table and then start sorting it out, right? Like, what is HGB going to do in regards to, the economics that they have in comparison to what we have on the governing side in regards to fish, and in recognition that we're investing as well and putting back into our salmon streams,
Yeah.
into our rivers, and what does that mean in, moving down the future, into the future. So it'd be nice, it'd be good for us to have, with Bob Balking and others and HGB and the Kuwait government to sit down to align it up with our strategic plan in terms of here's what our responsibility is to get the fish our treaty right, and here's what our responsibility is to licenses as the business arm of our nation, and get some of our fishermen involved, if not all of them, involved in that discussion too, because I remember going into treaty when we were talking about purchasing licenses and quotas, and when we got to that chapter in negotiations, we were really involved with our fishermen. So I see this being a similar approach.
Yeah.
Now we're in a different structure now, and we have these licenses, and fishermen, the picture is a lot different today than it was then, when they were out there. You hear the window every year in the troll season, the gillnet season, is that window is shrinking every year.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't know what that chokehold means to them, and in terms of, making, the healthy decision to get to a place around fisheries. So I just want to make those comments.
Well, thank you. John will go next, but there is a comment that I want to make. And it's all, when we acquire license or quota, that's an asset, correct? So it'll go on the book as an asset. So even though we're spending money, it'll still be an asset. But when we buy a boat, that's where the risk comes in. So depending on what kind of boat we buy, a boat usually depreciates in value.
Correct.
So that there isn't, the advantage that we're using now, getting someone else to fish, is no cost on us of running and maintaining a boat. But the point being, I almost came to the conclusion of buying Clifford's boat. I looked at the numbers, I put the numbers together, it was doable. The only thing that wasn't doable was, Robert, do you realize you're 72 years old now? End of story. John?
Yeah, so I think one thing I don't want to get away from is that all this stuff has been reviewed and considered at the treaty implementation and within the department. And so there are decisions that need to be made. I don't want to say that we have to do it right away. I think we do need to have good conversations about what's worth it and how do we determine that.
So how soon are you making a recommendation to someone in our process?
So if we're going to try to acquire something by, at the latest, end of June 2021, that means that we have the People's Assembly of 2020 as pretty much the only shot to get a decision through, depending on what it is we want to do.
Yeah.
Because we acquire something over $1 million in value, although I don't think any of the licenses are that much, but a big boat might be, right? Then we would need a vote. And I think we're going to want to have a joint conversation between finance and fisheries, and ECDEV and fisheries, and the HOPWIA and fisheries. And those can all be one big meeting, but depending on availability, I mean, we should look at that. I don't think we're going to be ready to have a decision to put forward to People's Assembly unless we do all the work after next week, in the next 2 weeks, and even then it would be a late item. So I don't think it's going to be realistic to try to get a decision on anything that requires People's Assembly decisions. We could get to a point where we can update what our plans are at the People's Assembly and go from there and seek direction, but not binding direction. And that's probably something we're going to end up doing anyway. It's a complicated matter, so what we need to do is boil it down to certain decision points that make sense from the perspective of what it is we want to do with fisheries moving ahead. Because commercial fisheries still exist. But what I'm worried about is, and this is an outside chance, but if we do the math and we ask finance to bring in, an analyst to do a Monte Carlo on this, financial analysis, business analysis, and they come back and say it's actually cheaper just to pay your fishermen not to fish.
Yeah.
That's scary, but I don't know the answer to that, right? Because what we're not considering is the cost of the regulations that we'll have to carry out on behalf of the Crown on the management of the resource. And that may kind of be a net cost to the nation and then it's whatever the fishermen can make off of that system. Whereas what if the net cost of all that regulation ends up being equal to or more than what the fishermen would be getting?
Mhm.
Would it just be better off at that point to have some other program to support commercial fishermen
Mhm.
directly?
Yeah.
And that's an example. I'm not saying that that's something we necessarily
Good
need to
point.
be too
Yeah,
worried
good
about,
point.
but there are costs involved in what it is we need to do, and we should look at everything realistically. That being said, if these numbers hold up and things get better, and it seems like they can in some of the areas, it might still be worth to do, but I don't know the answers on that. I don't know how much it's worth.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I think that work needs to be done from the perspective of not just managing the resource
Mhm.
and checking off boxes, but what's it actually worth business-wise? What's it actually worth in the nation? Our cost, right? So, we just need to commit to actually having those meetings in a way that decisions can be made, and recommendations can be made to council. We ultimately decide, right? But this is something where I think we should be fully informed on what it is we're doing, because I think Trevor's right about, Kayuka Checklist and having a plan, whereas we don't necessarily. So,
So, let me, Trevor, before you go, John, I think we need to get to a point where we can have something that can be considered, and I would be bold that you make some kind of recommendation, whether it's the finance committee or somewhere, whatever process we need to follow, because based on here, there's nobody adamantly opposed to doing that.
Yeah.
But just one more comment, and this is for Paul too. When we were pursuing a halibut quota in the treaty, it was $25 a pound. And I'm sure as we're sitting here today, it's substantially more than that. So I'm just saying, and sure we would have to pay for halibut quota, but it would have been worth a lot more to us today if we held that quota. Trevor?
And I think that's even just more reason to, I think my recommendation to leadership and so I think in John's portfolio, leading it, but I see something where it'd be really beneficial if we could have a meeting where we're talking from the Wade's perspective, our businesses, everybody that's involved pretty much. It's almost like a summit of everybody in fisheries to have some conversations, take some clarity around how we're going to move forward. So what I'm thinking is something in between in the fall and winter leading up to legislature, leading up to the next People's Assembly, having everything that John's talking about to a place. Because I see the ECDEV playing a role, so whatever we're providing means for, commercial and recreational fishermen in the way of fuel and ice and things like that. But really, I think the overall scope and direction has to come from us in working with all together, having some answers, because I'm, from the business side, uncomfortable with fisheries because we don't have a plan in place yet. But you're right, Robert, there is time where if we acquire something now, it's gonna pay off for us in the future. And that's why I asked for the fisheries assessment from the EDC level, is that way when I'm looking at it, I see something and then we can start making some decisions there. So my recommendation is something working towards, again, if we can all be together from your treaty implementation to finance, ECDEV, and then inviting, again, SDC, other people that are prominent in the fisheries industry that can answer questions in this meeting would be great for me, so that from the holdings board level, I'd have some better way forward in regards to our fisheries limited partnership and how we participate in things like crab lice acquisitions or anything else that the nation might be doing leading up to next year's People's Assembly.
Yeah.
And it's nothing to say we can't call it People's Assembly.
that's true. I just didn't want to assume.
Okay.
Oh,
Ed?
Ben?
Ed?
I love the idea of getting a boat, like some kind of a combination boat. I was getting excited when I was looking at the report last night, and there was like various lists of different kinds of boats and prices, and I was like, all right, I said, man, this is exciting. I mean, but because you see families on the West Coast, there's the Charleston's, there's the Amos's, you think of Terry Amos and how he treats his boat. You think of Charleston's on how they treat their boat. And they're on one side of the island, then they're on the other side of the island. And there's a lot of brothers, there's a lot of family in the Charlestons, you know, and it provides a lot of jobs for their families. And I think it's, you know, we continue to hire people to fish for us. And I think it'd be great. I mean, there's ways of having that boat multi-purpose, like a combination boat where, you know, you're fishing herring when herring comes, but then again you're fishing for sockeye, and then you're long lining, you know, and you're really putting some serious thought into to what boat this is. So then, you know, it is fishing all year round. So then it is not too big but not too small, so then it can catch the herring, but then at the same time when it comes time to go trolling, then you're able to, your legal size to go trolling, you know. So then I think it's exciting, you know, and I feel that our nation is capable of doing this, and, you know, I can't wait for council, you know, to bring it to the people in some way so that we can make a decision on this matter. But I just wanted to say something. I think I have my hand up right after Derek.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Okay, I think there's enough discussion on that. I think, John, in my opinion, it needs to, you know, why shouldn't we look at something? I think it's safe to say let's start putting it through the processes of recommendations to however the process has to go. John?
So we do have Christine Greenman coming now, so we may want to just kind of recess this discussion and then find some time for her after the next couple. If we have any questions, she's a little more expertise on the specifics of the numbers here. I think what we want to do is ensure that we have a path forward. So these reports are done. We just don't know how much money there is or willingness there is to acquire other Monmouth Nations allocations. So we should build towards those specific conversations sooner than later, but we should look at the formation of an entire plan. We could do both. It's up to us to decide how long or how quickly we want to act on these things. I don't think it's like deathly urgent, I'm not certain. So, but I may be missing a specific question that we're not asking, but from the documents, that's what's being put forward.
All right. Okay, so close this up. Are we done now, or is she here?
She is not here. I think Jane is on the phone. Yeah. Maybe
Decision
wait outside.
for John, for me, I think my comfort, like in regards to going through the process, I'd definitely like to have one meeting where all the chairs, so that all the council members that would be involved would be in one meeting to be able to hear everyone's conversation or input or questions that would be asked,
Yeah.
rather than separately, so that I would definitely want to hear from Hapia and the finance committee in regards to some of what their considerations are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
I would just like to acknowledge that Christine's here. So I had taken them through the documents that exist, and the specific, the February 9th memo, there's 3 recommendations is where I started. And really I think that the conversation is about, first and foremost, feedback on the overall approach is minimal in regards to the technical work that's being accepted. In regards to which licenses we would acquire, Council has been signaling that we don't really feel that we have enough information on the value of licenses from an economic or financial perspective, to a point where maybe there should be a recommendation from finance. In addition to that, there's a conversation about we need to figure out where the value lies and how we discuss the where that value comes from to create a budget for the acquisition of licenses. From there, we discussed the potential conversations that we could have in a wider array of committees. so that there's a greater understanding of finance at the Hopia, to make a recommendation jointly or individually to move forward with something. So there's willingness to do that. But the one thing I wanted to ask is, the deadline for license acquisition is July 2nd, 2021, correct?
That is the current understanding
Okay.
at the Munalf Fisheries Committee and of Bob Walking, based on when the decisions were made in the Housing litigation. This is not
Okay, I see.
necessarily been confirmed or agreed to by Canada. And this is an item that was put in the briefing that Kathy and I were working on last week,
Yeah.
where it's a little bit up for interpretation because that process with the housing litigants isn't all done and dusted.
Mhm.
This is essentially the, I'll call it the worst case scenario, is that this is the timeline that we are on,
Okay,
but it may not be the case.
okay.
So that would be, if it was, the trigger time for me too, in our view, is July 2nd, 2013. That's what's triggering everything else, correct?
That's the assumption that we're working on to be safe.
To be safe. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense now.
Yeah.
Yep.
That may not be the case, but once again, we haven't gotten word back from Canada on that, and it's been a bit frustrating. And now that tool's down federally,
So-
it's even worse.
It's better for us to position in case they're the ones that say, oh yeah, the trigger time's now over.
Yeah, and depending on who's in power in a couple of months,
Yeah.
that may be a fight. So,
Gotcha.
And
And
what-
just one more thing, Christine, it's my view that we haven't had any resounding, no way, don't buy any licenses, no, we don't wanna do that. I think it's safe to say we're all looking at something that makes good economic sense, we're willing to go down that road, so I hope that helps.
Yeah, and can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I continue?
Yeah.
So this document that John's running through now is this one, right? So this is the one that came in.
yeah,
Yeah, so this is the one that council had discussed before
Yeah.
the election, and motions were made to advance
Yeah.
most of the recommendations in here. And then this is a lot to go through in this meeting, so I wouldn't attempt it. But this one, called Framework for Assessing Seafood Opportunities, this is the one that really gets into helping to answer these questions about what the value of the various license options are that we would receive back, and also what it would cost to purchase them. And also goes into some of the aquaculture tenure stuff that's not connected in with Me Too, but that is an opportunity that the nation has.
So Trevor had brought up a kind of a unified fisheries plan so that it can be all assessed equally, and that's something that we would work together on. I wasn't sure the urgency of making certain decisions though, so we would do it in a stepped approach. But having a plan that kind of fits together aquaculture, fisheries, ground or salmon, all that kind of thing,
Yeah.
would be to our benefit, but I think requires feedback from at least finance, ACDEP, HOTWIA, if not focus groups with fishermen and so on and so forth.
Right.
So I think I'm going to reiterate what Robert had said. There's no opposition to anything that's written down. It's more, is there a process to make sure that this is communicated so that we can show we're doing the work to do it right when our part of Me Too, of actually getting into a commercialized domestic stuff, is there. So we've talked about some of the numbers involved that you took me through, and that their value may be higher to individual fishermen if we have fewer fishermen, or more quota, and so on and so forth. There's just enough process where we don't know how much budget we would be putting forward for the acquisition of licenses yet. And to get there, we probably need feedback from finance,
Yeah.
This document actually was a decision or motion direction given to the Economic Development Officer in regard to the framework for assessing seafood opportunities.
Yes.
For the very reason, when you look at our ACDEV Act and our governance and fiscal agreement, was to make sure that whatever we were looking at would meet those, because that's what we're governed by, as the Economic Development Act. That's why it's important from the ECDEV side when we're looking at fisheries that the plan that we're looking at is almost two-pronged. What we're trying to do as a nation, and what we're trying to do as a business. Terminology is really important because the economics of fisheries doesn't mean it's the economics of our businesses. Very distinct difference that I speak to quite often when we're speaking with fisheries. So it's, that's why I'm asking for when we do the group meeting together. I think that'll help things move along. Because I'm in the same place. I think we do want to acquire licenses, but we just want to figure out how we want to do it.
Who's paying for it and over what amount of time and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Given the other priorities we may have.
Yeah.
So there have been, so.
Just to finish with that, I am pretty curious. We're currently going down the TFL 44 process of acquiring TFL 44, having a larger percent interest. I'm wondering within fisheries, because we're acquiring more licenses over an area, and you mentioned the ability, if Toquat and others are not interested, do we have opportunity to acquire more?
Yeah, that's.
And in our strategy development, if we have more, does that give us more ability to manage and be able to make things sustainable in a way that because if we're doing it small, it's hard to do anything, but if we're doing it for a larger thing, like we are with TFL 44, gives us better opportunity to actually meet those goals we're trying to meet.
Yeah.
So,
And
just a question too, if there's opportunity there.
it more quota, more licenses increases the flexibility and the overall numbers. And it depends on how you split out. If there's a lot of operating fishermen and it's split between that, yeah, their share gets bigger the more quota they have, but the initial cost of going in is higher, right? So it's that math in addition to if you concentrate, and this is what Connie was talking about with a larger vessel or one vessel, is the overhead is lower if you can go out fewer times but catch more things. So there's a financial business case for one, but then it concentrates value in that one thing. And we need to determine what our focus is in regards to the whether or not we want the value to be put to our fishermen, if they want to go out individually, or if we want to concentrate in a few boats and have those fishermen and deckhand stuff work on those boats. And how much does it cost for us to regulate that? And I don't know the answer to the regulate part because that's negotiated once we get to the starting line. And that'll be fun. So, is that correct?
Yeah, to a degree.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how thoroughly you went through this.
I haven't gone through the considerations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through this report.
Not with council.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't want to jump in and tell you something you've already discussed.
Yeah.
So these are all background and the lead up to this report.
And considerations is the latest one. I was going in order, but yeah.
I did get here in a good time. So, there's two main sections to this report.
It's the one with the orange title, if you're online.
So,
It says Fisheries Considerations, August 25th.
I just have a question about this. If we're going to be meeting as a group to go through this and to look at recommendations coming forward to Executive Council, do we need to be going through that here today? Because we're going to be going into the details of this at our group meetings. Yeah.
Good point.
I think that's what I was saying, it should be just direction to move towards
Yeah.
where we're going to start going through the process. So wherever you end up starting, that there's going to have to be a recommendation coming.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me the first group that is Finance Committee, correct?
Yeah.
There's going to be something that you're going to sit down with so you can develop a recommendation for our consideration.
Yeah.
That'll be the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move this forward now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I kind of, well, it's okay.
Good.
I kind of see ECDEV
Oh, yeah, negative,
being
yeah.
the group that
Yep.
could look at other opportunities to see what the value is that they could create outside of what we're doing as a nation.
Yeah.
And it might be indirect stuff, but that could be supplemental and provide further evidence that maybe we should go ahead with this plan over this plan, depending on those kind of arrangements. So what I'm hearing is that there's an overall kind of general acceptance of the considerations and the framework. We just need to go through the process of having those discussions to determine whether and to what degree we will be acquiring licenses and allotments.
Yeah.
And really, it's just making sure that we are aware of that 2021
Yeah.
kind of deadline.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if we're going to acquire things above a certain value or doing things radically different than what's expected,
Mhm.
we need to talk to the People's Assembly, and that'll likely be the People's Assembly of 2020.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
I think that's just your starting point with meetings is
Yeah.
what you're meeting those timelines,
Yeah.
and we work backwards and you make a plan from there.
yeah, and the other reason I wanted to talk about this now is that fisheries items were really important during the election. And then they're likely to be brought up at the People's Assembly, so we want to make sure that we're showing a line of work that's been happening dating back to at least February. That's the major document that I'm looking at. And then all the way to the framework and the considerations document. What we'll be doing moving ahead is showing what our plan will be in order of licenses and or quota, even more so through anything we negotiate with Monmouth. So from my perspective on the Monmouth side, I'd like to know as soon as possible because it might be in negotiation with Monmouth over acquiring their space. Is there value to that space? Is there something we can do to accommodate them on forestry side or something? Or monumental cedar, you know, that kind of thing. And the more time we have, the better off we can be. So I just want to show that we're not doing nothing, but that it's super complicated before we get to the lawyers. So that's just kind of setting expectations.
So today, is there any kind of decision needed from us today?
I am wondering, from the department's perspective, is there anything that would enable that, further enable work, or is working with finance and NECDEV and in the future enough?
I wanted to talk about the timelines a little bit.
Okay.
Because there's a bit of
Great.
a nuance in this where it's not that we need to have our licenses purchased by 2021. In this document, which is the draft briefing to Monmouth decision makers regarding the Me Too provisions in the treaty.
So dated 4th of July.
So this was put together by Bob Bocking for all of the Monmouth nations so that they would understand what these various timelines are, and again lays out the difference between the Monmouth side or the Me Too side agreement and the Me Too clause in the treaty, because they're each separate things that each have different timelines, and they're all intertwined but don't have to happen at the same time, and they don't both have to happen. One has to do with the negotiations for our ability to split licenses or do other non-standard fisheries in this similar way to the Ahousaht litigants. And the other piece has to do with moving our package of licenses, which is the harvest agreement, into our treaty so that it is that package of licenses constitutionally protected. So there's two different timelines there. And in the back of this document,
What's next steps?
it goes through next steps. And so this is where you get more of the nuance of the timelines, and there's decisions that need to be made, like this meeting that we're talking about all together would need to happen very soon according to these timelines. Because here what's recommended is that no later than October of 2019, each Monmouth government should make decisions on whether or not to obtain additional licenses and quota and place them in the harvest agreement with a view to eventually rolling them into the treaty. This step, including the relinquishment process, needs to occur as soon as possible so that the Me Too clause can be triggered by July 2021.
Question on that.
Yeah.
To make the decision, what's their definition of decision? Is it to the intent, or do you actually, in regards to purchasing additional licenses, what's the?
So the recommendation in that number one is just that the decisions are made of our intention. But in number 2, it says here, between October and December 2019, those nations wishing to expand their participation in the harvest agreement should discuss and reach agreement on how to occupy the remaining space. So it's saying, first we have internal discussions, and then everyone else is working individually towards being able to have discussions between October and December of this year as Manalf to come to agreement about how we'll make the sharing work. And then it says in January 2020, so right around the corner, we should trigger the Me Too side agreement and start the discussions with DFO on negotiating a fishery similar to what's been extended to the 5 First Nations. And then in June 2021, we should trigger the Me Too clause in the treaty. So the timelines are, they're quite close. And the big things that I was hoping to get an indication of from this report today is whether the Weather Council, and it's okay if this goes to the next meeting, but are folks in agreement with the way that the sharing arrangement has been set up? And this is based on the discussions that happened at the time of treaty signing. It was decided that the value of the licenses would be split amongst the Manalf nations based on population, which is how other allocations are split. So do we agree with what's been advanced here? And then this other discussion that we have talked about deferring about whether or not we would like to acquire additional licenses. So that's the big one out of the first part. And then the second part in here is all about how we use those licenses. And the big thing that I'd like to just get across in this forum is to make sure that there's an understanding that in addition to if we move towards a situation where we're fishing these licenses in a mosquito fleet, not only will it bring less cash right into the nation through the HFN Fisheries LP or otherwise, and put those funds into the pockets of fishers, which I think is the overall goal. It will also take quite a bit in terms of management of that fishery, monitoring of that fishery, additional, and that management is additional staff probably, so it will, there will be costs to the nation. So that's one thing, just to make sure that everyone's going in with open eyes to that fact. What's been set out in here in terms of a proposal for how this mosquito fleet could operate. This is a proposal from Stuart Nelson, from Bob Balking, and I've been editing it but not advancing those. This isn't necessarily what it will look like, but this is an option of what it can look like and some of the things that need to be considered. And I think it's important that there's a lot of honesty with our fishers that are really excited about this and about it moving forward, that there is going to be a structure that is somewhat like this that'll be necessary, just so that people are not getting their hopes up about things being one way when there are a number of things that need to be involved. So open and honest.
How is it going to get money into our fishers? Like, how are they going to sell their fish? Who's going to buy it?
So,
I can.
yeah, go ahead.
So it's not entirely understood at this point. There are, the way things are working currently for the Houseit litigants is that there's a process that has to be followed in terms of like any other commercial fishery, where the fishers they have to land their catch at a particular place, have it verified, get a landing slip, So that is all the same as any other large-scale fishery. But then after that, those fishers can sell their fish to anyone who is allowed to buy it. And so any commercial facility can purchase it. And just like is possible with a commercial license holder now, if they get what's called a vendor's license from BC, which actually comes through the health authority, then that allows those fishers to do dockside sales
Dockside,
or sales direct to restaurants or
Yeah,
so on.
exactly, yeah.
So the full opportunity is
And
there.
that's the market we're not taking advantage of right now.
Yeah, and the vendor license option is available right now to any of our fishers that has a commercial license.
Yeah.
They can go through that process, and it mostly has to do with upholding a food safe
Mhm.
kind of
That's it, yeah.
thing. So that